Yeah.
I mean, it's a caricature to say that Christians they all just believe without evidence and without thinking. It's like, oh, have you read the apologetics? Have you read the gallons of ink spilled over debating and trying to justify positions?
Alex O'Connor is a world-famous atheist who tries to pursue truth as much as he can. And lately, he's been making some interesting cases for theism.
What?
I know, it's kind of crazy, but stick around because this is a really good one.
Well, the idea is that everybody worships something. Everybody has their dogmas. Everybody has things that they believe essentially without evidence. And the atheist message was always, we're people who analyze these questions. We're people who plug in those gaps in our knowledge. And if we can't justify something, we're not going to believe it. And with that, they levy this closed-minded accusation against the religious. And I guess there's one thing to say that they do it as well. Do you think that they do it more so?
If you read the works of the apologetics, it's really this whole exercise in trying to grapple with that, where they say we're not believing in something just because we believe in it, and we're sticking to this really very serious attempts at trying to understand, to explain, and there's a great deal of doubt and self-doubt. So I think it is really on the other side where there is this certainty that there is nothing, and then trying to get everyone to come to the belief that there is nothing. And I'm not saying this is true for every atheist.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a caricature to say that Christians they all just believe without evidence and without thinking. It's like, oh, have you read the apologetics? Have you read the gallons of ink spilled over debating and trying to justify positions? Now, of course, atheists will say that, well, we do that too, and we do it better. But you're someone who's been on both sides of that. And I think when atheists say, oh, Christians, they just believe it because their parents told them to, they're thinking of like their uncle at Thanksgiving. Yeah, they're not thinking of the William Lane Craigs or the Alexander Pruses of the world. They're thinking of someone that they know personally. But similarly, I know more atheists who are just atheists because, I've never seen any evidence, whatever, haven't given it much thought, than I know atheists who've sort of reasoned their way into that conclusion. I think it happens on both sides, in other words, but you're someone who's now lived both of those sides and interacted with both of those sides. And you said a second ago that you feel like more closed-mindedness comes from the atheist side than the Christian side.
More closed-mindedness comes from the atheist side, and more certainty. Again, not for every atheist, but definitely if you take atheism and you turn it into an activist position, because then you're selling something. And that's what is, it's blinding, isn't it? You become so confident. And I think even a little more than confidence, there's an element of arrogance. And this is it. There's really nothing more to know or learn or find out. We have it. There's nothing.
I mean, people will say that that's what the Christians say. They say, I have my answer in this book, and I'm a humble Christian who has the answer to the biggest question of the universe and knows the truth, and there's no need for further inquiry because we have the scripture. It tells us the way things are.
I'm sure that's
too.
the case. I'm sure that's the case for a lot of Christians. And I have to tell you, on a personal level, it is wonderful to have the answer, to have this relationship with God, a God who's loving and whom I talk to and pray to and feel a sense of peace. But then on a more intellectual level, when you take the position, there is something. I think you are then much more involved mentally in proving or even finding out. The curiosity is very high. It's finding out, well, if there's something, what is it then? And where can I find it? So I think that opens up just a whole lot more in terms of learning and reading and finding out. And, in the time that I became a Christian, I've also been approached by people saying, hang on, there is something, but it's not necessarily Christianity. It's something else. There's an energy, and people are giving it all sorts of names. But that, I think that stance, that mental stance, it provides for more curiosity than the position where there's nothing, I can't be bothered. Or I can only be bothered to tell other people that there is nothing.
Is it reasonable to believe in God? Yes. Is it reasonable to believe that God does not exist? Also, yes. I happen to believe it's much more reasonable to believe that God exists, but there are plenty of great arguments on both sides of that question. Alex O'Connor gives a very fair critique of that view. He says that gallons of ink have been spilled by very intellectual people making arguments for the fact that God exists. The philosophy of God is not some minor subject that you can just casually toss aside because you think that the belief system is cruel. Yes, I'm looking at you, Dr. Richard Dawkins.
The idea that we're born in sin is a hideous idea. The idea that the only way to be saved from sin and the wages of sin is Jesus' death is a hideous idea.
It's something that should be taken seriously, and now if you land on the side of God not existing, hopefully you've done that because you've considered the arguments and you think that your side actually has better reason to it. But up until about 1600, the fact is that most philosophers believed in the existence of God. We're talking about Aquinas, Augustine, Pascal, some intellectual juggernauts, people with IQs literally off the charts. And more recently, we've seen Christopher Langan, a man with the highest IQ ever recorded, admit that he believes God exists.
If we're talking about a theory of everything, the first question we have to establish, does God exist?
Yes.
There is an incredible foundation of work done by highly intellectual people defending the idea that there is a real God. But yes, good job, random faceless account, commenting on my videos that we believe in nothing more than a sky daddy. You absolutely nailed the argument. St. Thomas Aquinas would be completely pleased that you fully understand his stance. I don't mean to pick on anybody personally, but I have to say, comments like that, there's no better word for them than they're stupid. Like they're actually stupid. And this doesn't mean the person is stupid. And that's what really bugs me, because sometimes these people are incredibly smart, much smarter than I, but they just say stupid things that they haven't really thought through. We all do it, but people tend to do it quite a lot if they've been an atheist their whole life and think they know everything about the other side arguing for God's existence. Like I said, they're people who are often much smarter than me, but just haven't taken the time to look into the arguments that the other side is putting forth. And so they say really ridiculous things. Christians can do this too. They can often just parrot lines that they heard growing up in the church, not really understanding the full foundation and the breadth of the worldview that they are believing in. And that's a shame. They completely ignore what is said in 1 Peter 15 for having a reasonable defense for your faith. And that's an absolute travesty, maybe even a sin. But I do agree with Ayaan Hirshi Ali here in saying that more often than not, it is the atheist who is far more closed-minded. So if you're atheist or agnostic and haven't really ever taken the time to look into what some of the world's greatest thinkers ever have said about God and his existence, I'd encourage you to do so. Because likely you might be a very, very smart person who has said dumb things in the past, and nobody wants to be that person. Besides, what have you got to lose by fully looking into these arguments and giving them a fair shakedown? You'll either realize you've been right all along, or that maybe there's just a little something more out there.